Hello there, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Sci-Fi Academia YouTube channel. This is a YouTube channel where we talk about science fiction things that we love, such as Star Trek, Star Wars, and Doctor Who. Today we are taking a bit of a look at the Star Trek Voyager episode, Learning Curve. Now, this episode begins inside of Janeway's romance novel ghost story-esque holodeck program, and I thought the scene went on for way too long. I don't understand the point of this holodeck program. It's, sprinkled in the show in a few episodes in this first season, and I'm not sure what the point of it is. It rarely has anything to do with the greater plot of the episodes. I guess they just wanted to show what Janeway does to relax, I guess, but it just strikes me as very strange, almost like they had these scenes written to just tack onto any episode that didn't quite make the runtime. I don't know. I don't understand the point of this holodeck program, right? Maybe there's an episode I've forgotten where it plays a bigger role, and this is just sort of trying to plant the seeds for that bigger episode. That could be interesting. But overall, I'm not sure the point of this program. I'm not sure exactly what it tries to communicate to us about the character of Janeway. At the end of the day, I'm just not sure why it's here. Now, after that, we see Tuvok gain on a member of the Maquis' case for trying to fix a gel pack without going through the right procedures first. The member of the Maquis comes off very aggressive, perhaps a little too aggressive.
I would remind you, Mr. Dalby, that you are no longer on a Maquis ship.
I'm well aware of that, Lieutenant. And every minute of every day I regret it.
It is kind of the point of the story that this guy doesn't get along with Tuvok. So it kind of works, I guess. There's always sort of, in a lot of TV shows, there's sort of just a moment where people just don't get along for the sake of, just having some conflict, which I get. We need conflict in our stories, but can also be sort of annoying. Nonetheless, Tuvok mentions this member of the Maquis to Janeway, and this leads to Tuvok being put in charge of training a number of Maquis crew members.
So, what do you think, Mr. Tuvok? Are you up to training a group of raw cadets?
Me?
Dalby, the Maquis from the beginning, and a number of other previously Maquis crew members meet with Tuvok in the cargo bay for his sort of boot camp with these Maquis members that aren't quite adjusting to being part of a Starfleet crew, I guess.
Crewman, from this point on, you will speak only if you are spoken to.
But, Lieutenant, I'm just
40 laps around the cargo bay.
Now, these characters I don't find to be very interesting, which is likely why we never see any of them again in the show, unless there's something that I'm just not remembering. I think all of these guys are forgotten fairly quick. Now, there is a blue guy that I think is kind of interesting that's among this group. And this blue guy is actually is kind of funny because the rest of these people are like, what you might expect from Maquis, where they're a little over aggressive, they're getting into fights and stuff like that. But this blue guy, his issue is just that he talks too much.
Your report indicates that you are talkative.
Well, I guess they do say that he's unreliable as well.
And unreliable. You promise to do tasks which then go undone.
But it is kind of nice that the show does kind of show through the blue guy that there is troublemakers that are more than just people who are overly aggressive. You know, some people are lazy, some people, you know, talk too much, I guess. It's something I cannot relate to, because I never talk. I never say anything. That's why most of my videos are just me staring at the camera in silence. There's a lot of reasons that different personalities might not work in a situation like this. When Dolby storms out of the cargo bay saying, "None of us want to be here," you gotta just take a look at this blue guy. I love the way he marches out of there. It's so funny, you know, like, it just gives the vibe of, like, you know, here's like a 6-year-old who knows that they've done something wrong, that he knows that he's doing something wrong by marching out of the place where he's supposed to be. Like, no, I don't have to be in timeout. In just that sort of mischievous smile that he gives to Tuvok is very funny. Now there's this plot of Dilby, is that the right name? Hopefully. There's this plot of him, that is the Maquis from the beginning, and he's overprotective of another sort of crew member who's like part of this Maquis boot camp that Tuvok is, you know, heading up, named Garen. And this leads to something really interesting that, you know, we'll come back to in just a bit, so let's put a pin in that. Now, due to these Maquis members stomping out of this boot camp they're supposed to be part of, Chakotay is tasked with sort of checking in on them and punching them in the face. And I will say, I didn't quite like Chakotay punching the guy in the face the first time I saw this. But this time around it kind of makes a little bit more sense to me. Like, there needs to be some discipline for completely disregarding what you're supposed to be doing.
That's the Maquis way too, isn't it? And if you want to keep doing it the Maquis way, that's fine with me. We can do that tomorrow, the next day, every day until you report to Lieutenant Tuvok.
Something does seem kind of off about it, where it doesn't necessarily, I guess, work for Chakotay's character in my head. Like, I just feel as though he's sort of supposed to be a more peaceful character. I think it would have worked better if they still had the punch. At the end of the scene, Chakotay sort of was more calm after that, but he seems a little too angry even after he punches the guy. I don't know, I would love to hear if any of you have thoughts on this particular scene. Now we also get this fun scene of Dilby, I hope I'm saying his right name, but he's sort of complaining to B'Elanna Torres, one of my personal favorite characters in this show. I didn't really love her character the first time watching through because, you know, you've probably heard me complain a number of times about how it makes, like, the Klingon aggression sort of just a genetic thing, which I don't really care for. I like it to be more of a product of their culture. But through reviewing these episodes, I've actually come to really like her character and relate to her in certain ways. Nonetheless, Maquis guy complains to her about the sort of boot camp that he's being put through, and she responds, I think, quite excellently by saying, "Oh, it sounds like you're afraid that you won't be able to pass the boot camp."
In other words, you're afraid you won't make it.
Excuse me? That's not what I said. You think I can't make it through this ridiculous exercise? That's absurd.
Fine. Then make it through.
And she says, "We'll prove it. Do it." I really like this. I feel like it's a fun moment for B'Elanna, and also just very good sort of strategy for dealing with sort of more aggressive personalities. You know, you have to sort of learn to speak the language of the personalities you're working with. Now, there's a B-plot throughout all of this, where the gel packs on Voyager start going bad. They're getting sick. I don't find this B-plot to be particularly interesting. It's kind of there. I guess they do a good job of kind of connecting the A and B plot, which they don't always necessarily do in Star Trek. But overall, the gel packs malfunctioning, that just wasn't the most interesting story to me personally. Or perhaps it could have been an interesting story if written a little bit differently. But that B-plot does give us this fun scene of the Doctor talking to the gel pack as though it is a humanoid patient, which is very fun.
Don't worry, my little friend.
Doctor.
I'm a big sucker for just letting the Doctor be fun. You can tell Robert Picardo has a lot of fun, and that makes his character a lot of fun to watch. We see that the Maquis crew are being forced by Tuvok to run around the ship with tennis shoes and backpacks. I will say, the scene where the actors are all supposed to be tired from running around the ship, I think the guy who plays the blue guy got the wrong direction. Like, someone directed him to run like he has a broken leg. Which is kind of funny. I'm joking, of course. It's just, to be honest, all of these actors trying to act like they're tired of running does look a little bit awkward for all of them. It's not just the blue guy, but I like to pick on the blue guy because he's the funnest of them. In this episode, we also have Tuvok creating this simulation in the holodeck. It's very reminiscent of Captain Kirk's no-win scenario.
Armed photons, prepare to fire on the Klingon warbirds.
Yes, sir. Jim, their shields are still up. Are they?
Which he, of course, beat by changing the program.
I reprogrammed the simulation so it was possible to rescue the ship.
Which is very fun. I feel like this is kind of an intentional callback to that, as our Maquis boy, which I will from now on refer to him as, because I cannot remember his name, and I'm pretty sure I've said 5 names already in this video, 5 different names, and maybe one of them is the right actual name. Anyway, he even calls it a no-win scenario, and Tuvok's like, well, you should have retreated, and then you would have stayed alive. You know, dying isn't always the best thing. Dying in battle, it's not the best thing. We aren't Klingons out here. Anyway, I'm a big fan of the idea of Kirk being like, oh, this is a no-win scenario, well, I'll just change the rules so that I win, right? I like that sort of thing for his character. This is a complete side tangent, but I think the Kelvin timeline went a little bit too far in that direction, where he's like, too disregards the rules. I think the version of Kirk that we see in the original series, as well as just exists in my head canon for that particular character. I think he has an amount of respect for the rules, but now knows when he ought to break them. Though I can see that maybe because the Kelvin timeline Kirk is supposed to be a younger Kirk, that could kind of work. Anyway, all that being said, I like this because it reminds me of that. So, we'll leave it at that and move on. If you didn't notice, I went a little off script there. So, shh, don't tell anyone. But that rant was one of my off script rants that I just do when I'm recording. Shh. Don't tell them. Don't you tell them. So after the new win scenario, our abrasive Maquis boy, he says, you've proven your point, Tuvok. We're just not Starfleet material. I actually really like this a lot. A lot of times when like you'll have a teacher that's kind of more hard on you, it's easy to think that they're working against you. That's like, oh, they don't want me to win. When in reality, our teachers actually want to help us and want us to see how much we're capable of. There's also bad teachers that are just probably against us because they don't like us for whatever reason. We're too ugly, or they don't like the clothes we wear, or the sort of way we talk, or whatever it is. They just have problems with us. Anyway, all that being said, teachers, the people who are hard on us aren't always that. Sometimes they just want us to see how much we're capable of. Unfortunately, Neelix enters into this episode. You know, I famously am not a big fan of the character of Neelix. I don't like him. I don't like the role he plays. You know, in a lot of episodes he's just like childish in a lot of annoying ways, and then occasionally he's childish in sort of a fun way, but it's usually all the annoying ways. So, that's why I don't like him. But, I actually like what sort of the analogy he gives here. He's talking about how some of these flowers, you know, their stems are flexible and you can, you know, move them and their stems won't break. But some flowers are too rigid, and if you try and manipulate them, they'll just snap in half. So that's sort of the analogy he gives, and he's actually talking about Tuvok being too rigid.
Stem is brittle. You're saying that the Maquis crew is rigid and inflexible, that they will never adjust to Starfleet rules.
No, Mr. Vulcan. I'm saying that you are rigid and inflexible. But maybe if you learn to bend a little, you might have better luck with your class.
And I really like this because when you're trying to teach people, a lot of times you need to get to know the people that you're teaching, right? What will work for these particular people for them to learn what I need to communicate to them, I guess, right? You have to be able to adapt for what different students need from you. And we get to the moment when we figure out what's damaging the gel packs is cheese. That's right, gel packs are lactose intolerant, it appears. It's like a bacteria in the cheese that's being spread throughout the ship. And seemingly due to Neelix's advice, Tuvok invites our Maquis boy to play pool. And he talks about his sort of tragic origin story.
Here's the brief history of Kenneth Dalby. I coped by getting into a lot of trouble, till a woman came along and taught me about love. 3 Cardassians raped her and smashed her skull. I joined the Maquis and tried to slaughter as many of them as I could find.
And he explains the reason he's so protective of Garen is because he sees Garen as his younger self, which I think is a cool sort of story point in this episode. I won't get into too much detail here, but in sort of my teenage years, there was sort of a lot of, let's say, just heavy things that I went through. So now when I see younger men, you know, going through similar things, I do tend to be sort of protective of them, right? I do sort of try to just take them a little bit under my wing and help them out in as far as I can. The pool scene ends with Maquis boy saying he doesn't want to be Tuvok's friend. And it's about this time in the episode where I remembered Tuvok was actually part of the Maquis crew. So the writers either must have forgotten this because, you know, Tuvok would know the entirety of the Maquis crew, probably. I don't even know how big the Maquis crew was supposed to be, because the guys in this episode I don't remember seeing in that first episode, but whatever, we won't worry about it. Like, this episode sort of treats it like the Maquis wouldn't know him until they joined up with the Voyager crew, which just wouldn't be the case, because Tuvok was a spy on that crew. Maybe they're just, we don't need to mention it because it's not important to this story, though I think it would add a bit of, interesting sort of conflict if one of the people that were part of his sort of boot camp, if one of them had a problem with him because he was a spy on their ship prior to, and they don't trust him for that reason. I think that would have been better, because this just treats it like that never happened. So now, after so many gel packs go bad that Voyager starts malfunctioning, the Doctor says, well, let's heat up the ship and that will kill the bacteria that's killing the gel packs, essentially. In the meantime, this causes the Maquis squad to be stuck in the cargo bay, not having a good time. Garen passes out, and our Maquis boy wants to go and save him, but Tuvok won't let him. After the rest of the Maquis squad flee the cargo bay through a Jeffries tube or something, Tuvok goes back for Garen and ends up unconscious. The bacteria is all killed. The rest of the Maquis crew goes back to the cargo bay to save Garen and Tuvok. And everyone's happy, the day is saved. But that ends me to my last sort of thoughts. What do I think of this episode? Well, it's definitely not one of the great episodes of Star Trek. I would say it's definitely worth watching if you need something to watch, but it's not an episode you have to watch. I do appreciate that in this episode they do remember that Voyager used to be a Maquis crew and a Starfleet crew, right? Because Voyager likes to just kind of forget that, even though it's the initial sort of point of the series. So I do appreciate that element of it. Overall, I just don't think this was the best version of this story that could be told. I think there could be other sort of, I guess, better versions of this story. So it's one of those episodes that's take or leave. If you want to watch it, do it. If you don't, don't. And I unfortunately feel like most of Voyager tends to kind of be in this area where it's the episodes aren't bad, but they aren't the best episodes in Star Trek, right? Deep Space Nine, TNG, even the original series, those all have really solid episodes that you must watch. I would say you have to watch them. You gotta do it. If you don't, then I'll find you. And maybe Voyager, and I think it does, gets a little bit better as the show gets on. They just sort of, every show has kind of a learning curve. See what I did there? But I think this is sort of when they're still trying to figure out things in the Voyager show, what the show's about, all that. Overall, I think it's a fine enough episode. There's a fun blue guy. I love a fun blue guy. This has been Sci-Fi Academia, Tangent Studies. My name is Cademan David. If you like Star Trek or Doctor Who, I'll link both those playlists right here. Ooh, playlists, don't they look clickable? And if you want to subscribe to the channel, there should be a picture of my face that you can click on, of course, to subscribe to the channel. And if you do that, or you leave a comment, leave a like on the video, I will get you an automatic A+. Thank you so much for joining, and class dismissed. Have a very good night, and Live long and prosper, my friends. Bye-bye! No, I don't... No, 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 no. Nope, nope, nope. No, bad take. Do I have another sneeze? Really? No, it's gone. We're good. Okay. Spread throughout the ship. Not the chip. The shrimp? The shrimp? Ship. Sometimes words are difficult.